All right, well, welcome again, everybody, to our Planetarium Online program. I'm Mike Shanahan, the Planetarium Director here at the Jennifer Chalsty Planetarium at Liberty Science Center. And our program is going to be looking at the highlights in astronomy and space science for here in the fall of 2021, which will be starting in just a couple of minutes. So thank you again for joining us. We're going to be using the same software that we use to do shows in our dome here to bring the night sky to your home screens as well. Now, joining me in the chat is Andrew, who I'm sure many of you know. He'll be there to answer the questions that you have about astronomy and space science. And I should mention also that many of you remember Krista as well, who did many of these programs. Krista has moved on to an exciting new opportunity. She is now the director of the East Kentucky Science Center and Planetarium in Prestonburg, Kentucky. And Zach and our team is helping us out cover shows on site. If you do come see us on site, the same folks that do these online shows are also going to be the ones doing the shows right here in the planetarium. So that is a little bit different compared to our 30 or so past programs. We're actually right here in the planetarium, and I'll be using the planetarium for some of the visual effects here. The dome turns 4 as of this coming Thanksgiving weekend. 4 years ago, we renovated our IMAX Dome Theater to be not only a planetarium, but the biggest planetarium in the entire Western Hemisphere. So thanks again for joining us. And see, I'm checking the volume here to make sure everything's okay. If someone could email me from my team to make sure the volume is okay. I have one comment that folks are having a hard time hearing. Now we're going to be, wanted to mention a couple of things going on here at Liberty Science Center. We are open. Check our website for the hours of operation. Our planetarium has been open from the very beginning, ever since we reopened on Labor Day weekend 2020. The planetarium has been part of our offerings here. And you can check our schedule as well. We're doing shows on the planets, on a theory that an asteroid might have killed the dinosaurs, as a tie-in actually to our exhibit on Sue the T-Rex, which is here at Liberty Science Center until early January. Also coming this weekend, we're opening Paw Patrol, which is our newest exhibit for the young set. And also in early October, October 9, we debut our Fall Fest event of various special activities for the fall and also for Halloween. So thank you again for joining us. We're going to be in just a moment. I'm going to see if I can move my microphone a little bit closer here. I'm getting comments that the volume is rather quiet. I do have it mic'd about as high as I can go here, checking to see if that helps with the volume of the program. Yeah, if you could let me know, Andrew, in the chat, to make sure we have a good enough volume on this. Might have to talk directly into the microphone as if I was doing an actual show here. Let me try that momentarily. So holding the microphone, and if the team could let me know how this sounds. I haven't actually done a program like this, but hey, whatever it takes to make sure we can hear us properly. So we're going to be going out, first of all, and checking out the nighttime sky this very day. So one of the things about this autumn is that we still have a really good chance to view the planets in our evening sky. So we're going to go out and check out the sky as you would have seen it, first of all, just about an hour ago or so. Here's the sky you would have seen with the sun low in the sky if we didn't have a little bit of cloud cover. And we're going to go into the evening and check out where the planets are, first of all. You may notice already that it's getting darker earlier. I was rehearsing this show last night, walked out at 7:30, and bam, it was already full darkness right there at 7:30 in the evening. So the sun goes down, and right away, as it goes down a little after 7 o'clock, you'll notice an absolutely brilliant dot over in the western sky. So this brilliant dot is the planet Venus. Venus has been blazing away in our western skies for all of the summer and is going to be with us as a constant evening companion all the way until the end of this calendar year. So look for Venus. Just go out, look towards the western sky. It's going to be right above where the sun went down and will look like an airplane coming in for a landing, only it actually won't go in for a landing. It'll just kind of hover there and set about an hour after full darkness. So as a bonus, you can also, for maybe another day or two, if you have binoculars, you can also catch the planet Mercury huddled below Venus. So here is Venus, bright in large part because it's covered in shiny clouds. And then down below it, the planet Mercury may still just be visible for a day or two. They say that 1 person in 1,000 actually sees Mercury and knows they're seeing it. So if you can check this out by looking at this here, again, the planet Venus, they're low in the western sky, and then Mercury down below there. Check those out, kind of hovering low there. But for Mercury, you'll probably will need a pair of binoculars to spot it there. So coming out here at darkness, and as time goes by, we'll see the planet Venus set round about an hour after full darkness. And Venus will be basically doing the same thing all the way till the end of this year. So it'll be coming out as it's getting dark and then setting about an hour after full darkness. So let's go ahead and actually have a look at Venus using our planetarium system. So we're going to convert over to our theater. Now, Venus is the most brilliant dot of light in the sky, in part because it's covered in bright, shiny clouds that reflect the sun really well. It's a little bit ironic that the beautiful sight of Venus blazing away there in our western skies, as it were, is due in large part to those brilliant clouds, but it also means that those clouds itself trap heat on the surface like glass traps heat in a greenhouse. So those clouds have turned Venus into a terrible, no-good place. So down here on Venus, as you see right here in our dome, the temperature is always a stultifying 861 degrees Fahrenheit. The Soviets did land 2 craft on Venus. They lasted approximately 2 hours before the heat and the pressure knocked them out. Now, NASA so far has chosen to explore Venus from orbit using its Magellan spacecraft in the early 90s, for example. It radar mapped the entire planet Venus. So we have a good sense of what Venus looks like below those obscuring clouds. So most of Venus consists of rolling plains. There are 2 large continents as well, but no water to divide them because when it's 860 Fahrenheit, you can't have any water. So water, no, but volcanoes, yes. We confirmed recently that Venus is volcanically active, and the sides of certain mountains were even hotter than 860 degrees Fahrenheit, and they realized they were seeing flowing lava. So that again, the planet Venus, our constant evening companion from now to the end of 2021. Called our sister, it's the same size as Earth, has the same gravity, made of the same stuff, and no planet gets nearer to us than Venus, and yet an utterly, utterly different world because of that thick atmosphere. So leaving Venus behind, heading back again to our evening skies. So we are still here in the evening, still looking towards the west. It's now just before 9 o'clock, and Venus is now gone. But not to worry, there are other planets as well that, unlike Venus, will be with us all of the evening. We're going to turn around now and face towards the eastern sky. You may notice also that we do have a first quarter moon in the sky tonight. And so looking towards the eastern sky here around 9 o'clock, with Venus gone, all you got to do to find Jupiter from now to the end of this year is just look up after Venus has set before 9 and find the brightest dot of light in the sky, and that will be the planet Jupiter, outshone only by Venus. Jupiter is 3 times dimmer than Venus, but still much brighter than any star in the sky. So Jupiter is actually also appearing fairly close to Saturn. The two are side by side, as they have been for all summer. So if you're thinking of buying a telescope, this would be a really good time to go and get one. Andrew can give you some suggestions in the chat in terms of good options for inexpensive telescopes. So even in a small telescope, you can see that the planet Jupiter does have several large moons. These are called the Galilean moons, discovered by Galileo Galilei when he turned his newfangled telescope on the planet Jupiter in 1610. Of all his many discoveries made with the telescope, he was proudest of the discovery of these moons, now called the Galilean moons, and you can see them even with a moderate telescope. Any telescope you buy now for $200 will be a better telescope than Mr. Galileo had in 1610. You can also, in a telescope, see the beautiful banding on the planet Jupiter, this great gas planet. Now also the planet Saturn is in the sky. Saturn also an absolute knockout in a telescope, and that is going to be right next to the planet Jupiter, about the width of 2 hands to the right of Jupiter is where you would find Saturn. Now as the night goes on, these things are rising in the east at dusk, and then will be in the sky pretty much all night long. So Saturn going down around 2:45, and then we'll lose Jupiter about 4 o'clock in the evening. So you'll have them pretty much all the night. And again, if you just look up and look for Jupiter as the brightest dot of a light any time from 8:45 onwards, that'll be Jupiter. Look to the right, the width of 2 hands, and that will be the planet Saturn. So Pat was wondering, we mentioned 2 continents on Venus. What separates them if not water? So basically these 2 continents are raised up. If Venus had water, they would be separating these 2 large continents. One is the size of Australia, one the size of South America. So we've sent our robots to both Jupiter and Saturn. In fact, we've sent a robot to every planet in the solar system. So let's have a look at the planet Jupiter as seen by our NASA missions. Jupiter is brilliant because even though it's 10 times as far away as the planet Venus, it is enormous. About 1,300 Earths, or about 1,500 Venuses, if that's a word, would fit inside of the planet Jupiter. So here we are, we're threading the asteroid belt on the way to Jupiter. If you like asteroids, by the way, we're doing a whole show, as I mentioned, on the theory that maybe it was an asteroid that finished off the dinosaurs, neatly tying together astronomy and our T-Rex exhibit. Jupiter, often called a failed star, although it would have had to be much, much, much more massive for fusion to have begun in its core. Although the largest planet, it's also the fastest spinning, and that helps to create these ferocious storms. If you try to land on Jupiter, you would just sink down deep inside of Jupiter. Now, because there's no land to break up hurricanes, hurricanes can last forever. So the famous red spot, the large spot you see here, is 1.5 times the size of planet Earth. And there is no New Jersey or Louisiana or New York to break up the hurricanes, as we wound up breaking up Ida with our states a couple of weeks ago. So Jupiter, king of the planets, and blazingly bright, visible all the way through the evening till about 4 o'clock in the morning. So the planet Saturn is also an absolute knockout, both seen in a telescope and seen close up. So as we look at the planet Saturn, the rings are so bright, made mainly of water ice, that they were discovered way the heck back in 1655, long before the rings of the other planets, other gas giants were discovered. So the rings of Saturn, 50,000 miles across from one side to another, and yet only about 300 feet deep. So thin as a razor, probably caused by a moon that got too close to Saturn and got torn apart by its ferocious gravity. So that means that the rings of Saturn will not be around forever. Maybe in 300 million years, they will fall into the planet. So let's enjoy the rings of Saturn while we got them. And Saturn, close to Jupiter, and setting just before 3 o'clock. So check that out. Those twin great gas giants are together in the sky and will be visible for all of the autumn as well. So here we are looking at the sky as you would see it just after the setting of Jupiter and Saturn in the morning. And again, there's a post from Andrew in the chat telling you a couple of possibilities for buying telescopes. There are no sites more beautiful in a telescope than Jupiter and Saturn. So if you're thinking of buying one, these Orion telescopes, we use them at Liberty Science Center. And they're very easy to use and very effective in terms of being a way to really begin your exploration of the nighttime sky without investing a whole lot of money. So going back to our sky here in the morning, so this is the sky tomorrow morning just before daybreak. So I was mentioning that we're going to have Jupiter and Saturn all the way till the end of autumn. And actually, if we go to the very last days of the year, we're going to have a lovely sight to ring out the year 2021. So here, looking at about 5:30 in the evening, of course it gets dark really early by this time, 5:30 here, we are looking over at the western sky, and Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, that elusive planet, and Venus will all be gathered together in the western sky right around the time it's fully getting dark. That'll be a last hurrah for Venus and Mercury, and soon after that, in early 2022, we'll lose Saturn and Jupiter as well. But that should be a very nice way to wrap up this year with 4 of the 5 visible naked eye planets that are gathered together in the western sky at the very end of the year. Take a moment to take over the questions here. Now, there is only one planet of these 5 naked eye planets that is missing, and that, of course, is the red planet Mars. So Mars is, in fact, the only planet we cannot see at all for autumn of 2021 until the very, very end of the season. So here at the very end of the year, as is the sky again, December 31, we're going to wait, first of all, as we go into the evening. Jupiter will set by 9 o'clock here in this lovely gathering we'll have at the end of the year. But then if we turn around and face towards the eastern sky and go through the evening, we will be able to catch Mars returning to our skies at the very end of this autumn and in the early days of the winter. So here we are looking at the sky January 1, 2022, just before daybreak, and Mars will be this little tiny orange ember, very far away, very faint, but finally coming back into our sky, where it's going to remain for 2022 after being MIA for all of autumn of 2021. So the funny thing is that as Mars disappears from our skies, we're going to be hearing probably more and more and more about the planet Mars as we go into autumn because of our mission called Perseverance that is at the planet Mars right now. So Perseverance landed on Mars back in February, and it's now finished its sort of shakedown testing mode and is now beginning its science mission. So Perseverance, not the first lander we've had on Mars, not by a long shot. We've sent 25 missions to Mars. But the approach of Perseverance is a little bit different. It has just begun the process of collecting about 40 tubes of Mars, basically core samples, packing them in little tubes that are about the size of a pencil. And what's going to be different is that these little precious tubes of Mars will be brought back to Earth in a sample return mission in about 10 years. So they'll be able to actually analyze this Martian material to, among other things, see if there's evidence that Mars developed microscopic life in ancient times, back when Mars had water. Mars is dry as a bone now, but maybe it was a case where Mars might have been able to get at least microscopic life going in ancient times when it still had water. We've never found life anywhere else in the universe yet. Finding even evidence of microscopic fossilized life on Mars would be quite a breakthrough. So Perseverance, right there, here's a real image of Perseverance taken from the surface. Mars is indeed, if not a red planet, an orange planet. There is so much red dust that it even colors the sky pink. So as Perseverance gets rolling, there'll probably be a lot of great information coming about the red planet, even as we completely lose Mars in our skies for the duration of autumn 2021. So again, it's going to be a great season for the planets this autumn of 2021. But there's also going to be one more major thing. We have a question. Why do they call Jupiter the failed star? Jyothi, I believe it said, was asking about that. So if Jupiter had been much, much, much more massive, it would have had enough pressure in its core to begin nuclear fusion, and it would have lit up and become a second star, much like Luke Skywalker's planet in the first Star Wars movie. Now, who knows if we'd be here if we had not one but two stars in our sky with all the different cycles of night and day that would get wildly complicated with two stars in the sky. But that's why they refer to Jupiter as a failed star. If it had been much more massive, it would have had enough mass to begin fusion, light up like a star lights up. Okay, so volume sounds good now. Thank you, thank you. Good to hear that. It's always a challenge of Facebook Live where there's not an audio feed. So thank you all for the comments, and let me know again if there's any other change or need to crank the volume. So here we are looking at the planets, but the single most important event this year for naked eye astronomy, at least for this quarter, is going to be a near total eclipse of the moon coming up on in the middle of November. And this should be, if you've ever seen a lunar eclipse, it is one of the loveliest sights in astronomy as the moon turns this sort of interesting copper color. So let's go ahead and look at that event, which happens on the night of November 18 and 19, where the moon may turn as red for a few hours as Mars here is most of the time. So here we are. So first of all, I cannot emphasize this enough. To see this eclipse, go out on the night of Thursday, November 18. Even though it happens technically on November 19, it happens on the 19th in the early hours of the morning. So if you go out on the night of the 19th, you'll have already missed this lovely sight. So go out on the night of the 18th. The moon will rise that night. It'll be a full moon. Lunar eclipses only happen during full moons. And for the first part of the evening, we'll be seeing a regular full moon in the sky that night. Coming up around sunset, as full moons do, high in the sky at midnight. And after midnight, it'll start to work its way down the western sky. But then, at 2:18 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, I do need to remind you we're in Standard Time now, the moon will start to change. The moon will start to darken. The moon now is moving its way into the dark inner shadow of the Earth. And over the next hour or so, the moon will get darker and darker. So it may appear to vanish, or it may turn a deep copper color. The actual peak of this lunar eclipse will be at 4:02 in the morning. So if you don't want to stay up all night, set your alarm for 3:30, go to the window, check out the moon for a half an hour, then go back to bed. But at 4:02, it'll be a very, very deep partial eclipse. Not quite total, but the appearance should be about the same as a normal total eclipse. I'll define those in just a minute, what total versus partial means. So the peak will be at 4:02 Eastern Standard Time, but it will then slowly work its way out of the inner shadow of the Earth and right before day breaks, we'll go back to having a regular-looking full moon. So a lot of my job is managing expectations. Trying to see a shooting star shower can really be a challenge, but eclipses, both of the sun and the moon, are really, 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 really awesome visually. So the cool thing also about lunar eclipses is that half the world gets to see a lunar eclipse. It doesn't happen just in one area. And the timing is the same around the half of the world that gets to see the lunar eclipse. So let's go ahead and talk a bit about what causes it and then what you can expect to see elsewhere. So as the Earth goes around the sun, we cast a dark shadow into space that is called the umbra. And the umbra is important for making eclipses. Now, if you imagine we're on Earth looking towards the moon, our dark shadow is being cast into space. The moon wanders into our dark shadow of the Earth, and that's what darkens the moon and causes the eclipse. This diagram may help to explain that as well. Now, we're going to be looking down from above. So we'll be looking at, first of all, the sun, which goes around put the sun up here first. So here we have the sun. There is the Earth going around the sun. There is that umbra, that dark shadow that we cast into space. And then we have the moon going around the Earth. So the moon then wanders into the Earth's dark inner shadow, and that causes the eclipse that we'll wind up seeing on November 18 or November 19. So a couple of things. The Earth also has a faint outer shadow called the penumbra. And academically and technically, a lunar eclipse begins when the moon begins to wander into the penumbra. But this is of academic interest only. That penumbra is so faint, you won't see any change in the appearance of the moon as it goes into the penumbra. When it goes into the umbra, though, that's when the fun begins. So a partial eclipse begins when the moon begins to go into the dark inner shadow or the umbra. That's what a partial eclipse is, where the moon is partially in the dark inner shadow, the umbra of the Earth. A total eclipse of the moon is when the entire moon is in the umbra. Now, a little bit of the moon for this eclipse on the 18th and 19th of November will never go into the umbra. So it's technically a partial eclipse, but it's so deep, only a tiny sliver of the moon not fully inside the umbra, that'll be very much like a true total eclipse. So ignore the penumbra. The penumbral eclipse starts an hour or so beforehand, but you can't see anything. The real action begins at 2:18 Eastern Standard Time, early on the hours of the 19th of November, as the moon begins to wander into the umbra and ends when it fully exits the umbra at about 5:50 in the morning. So again, as I was saying, the cool thing about these lunar eclipses is that half the world gets to see them. And so everything you see here in pink is a part of our planet that will see this eclipse on the 18th and 19th. So if you're in this part of the world and the weather is clear, you're going to be able to see this lunar eclipse. And the timing is the same all over the part of the world that sees it if you adjust for your time zone. So to explain that, this eclipse begins at 2:18 Eastern Standard Time. So if you're in New York, Miami, Boston, Charleston, 2:18 is when it's going to begin. It'll end at 5:47, and the deepest moment will be at 4:02 in the morning. But if you're in Chicago, 1 hour earlier, the same eclipse will begin at 1:18, still on the 19th of November, go to 4:47 in the morning, and have its deepest maximum eclipse at 3:02. If you're on Mountain Time, the eclipse will start at 12:18, so just after midnight, and will end at 3:47 with a max eclipse at 2:02. And if you're on the West Coast, Seattle, Vancouver, LA, and so forth, it'll begin at 11:18 on November 18, the very end of the 18th, and then go to 3:47 with the maximum at 1:02. So all over the world, people are seeing the same thing in the one half of the world that gets to see this eclipse. So it should be an absolutely lovely sight. And the main thing, I can't stress enough, make sure that you go out early in the morning on the 18th. Or early in the morning, I should say, on the 19th. Catch it in the wee small hours of the 19th before daybreak. If you try to find it on the evening of the 19th of November, it'll have already occurred. Now, we will be doing a whole separate program on the 16th of November for Facebook Live on this eclipse, because it'll be such an awesome sight. We're going to do our own show just focused on the eclipse, and also previewing the great 2024 solar eclipse that'll be on the 8th of April. That'll be another spectacular eclipse to already get on your horizon. So yes, so how long do lunar eclipses last? Victoria is wondering. So it really depends on the lineup. This one's going to last for hours. That's the other great thing. I've been in this business long enough to know that any event you plan in terms of actually observing the sky, you can run afoul with clouds. A great thing about lunar eclipses is that you generally have hours, as is the case coming up here on November 18, 19, to try to catch it. And so you also don't need any special protection. No lunar eclipse glasses are necessary. You can just get out there and just check it out. Solar eclipses, you always need eye protection, except for the few moments when an eclipse of the sun is total. So monitoring any other questions here. So that is, again, going to be in the middle of November and should be really quite an awesome sight. They sometimes use the term blood moon to refer to a lunar eclipse because the moon does turn an interesting shade of copper. Let me back up for just a moment. So the reason why it does turn this odd copper color sometimes, albeit not always, is that the Earth is in between the moon and the sun. The sun's light on the way to the moon comes to the Earth, and our atmosphere blocks the short wavelengths of blue light, but allows the longer wavelengths of red light to pass through our atmosphere and continue on 250,000 miles to hit the moon. So that's why you have this very eerie copper color to the moon quite often during an eclipse of the moon. So two more things to mention in terms so this is astronomy we're focusing on, but two space-related things I wanted to mention. Now, these eclipses of the sun and moon we know about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years in advance. Things like space launches are dependent on many factors, including things like having a COVID epidemic get in the way. But there's an event that may happen as soon as mid-December, which is going to be a major step forward for NASA. Now, this may get bumped into early 2022, but it's the launch of Artemis One. So Artemis is the program to get human beings back to the moon within this decade. And a key component of that is the Space Launch System, or SLS, the most powerful launch vehicle that the human race has created, and one designed to have enough force to get humans back to the moon, and also possibly to get missions going off to Mars. So the launch from Cape Canaveral could be as early as the 16th of December, or maybe postponed into early 2022. This is a non-crewed, non-human flight, but it's going to basically go from the Earth to the moon in a 26-day flight, and then the capsule will come back to Earth and splash down in the Pacific. And so the first launch of the Space Launch System, which has been worked on for 10 years, a heavier lift vehicle than the Apollo Saturn V, so a major step forward in terms of lift capacity. It does use a number of former elements that were used in the space shuttle. A number of the engines and the external tank and so forth were based on elements of space shuttle design. Now, the other thing that's going to be brand new about this, besides the launch system, is the Orion capsule, kind of a Apollo capsule on steroids that will be used to get the crew to lunar orbit and also possibly to be used in a Mars human mission down the road. So we can see that gleaming capsule in the front view here. So this capsule here can hold up to 4 astronauts. And during Artemis 1, it's going to circle around the moon and then come back and splash down in the Pacific. So this is Artemis 1, a major step forward to getting people back to the moon. The first test of this launch vehicle, the first real test of the Orion capsule that you see in the foreground here, followed by a human mission that will go to lunar orbit probably in 2023, and then possibly a lunar landing with a human crew by 24 or 2025. But it all begins with this first mission that could lift off as early as mid-December. So speaking of a possible mid-December liftoff, and mid-December is still technically here in the autumn, there's also a strong possibility that the James Webb Space Telescope will lift off. 25 years in the planning, in some ways the successor of the Hubble Space Telescope, although we'll see in a moment it's quite a bit different. This is launching now. It'll be launched from French Guiana, and will be a very different animal in many ways than the famous Hubble Space Telescope, but in some ways is seen also as the successor of this amazing Hubble scope that has revolutionized our knowledge of deep space astronomy. So here we have the liftoff, and then we'll see the telescope emerging. So first of all, in terms of big differences, the telescope here, the James Webb Space Telescope, is far larger than the Hubble Space Telescope in terms of its mirror. With telescopes, what really matters is mirror size. This mirror on the James Webb will be 21 feet in diameter, compared to about 7 feet for the diameter of the Hubble Space Telescope mirror. So there's no vehicle that we have that can lift off a 20-foot diameter mirror by itself. So it's going to be in segments, in hexagonal pieces that will then open up once the spacecraft is well beyond Earth. Now, the other really key difference here is how far away the James Webb Space Telescope is going to be. And that is all driven by its mission, in that it's going to be studying mid-range infrared, not visible light like Hubble does. And to study the kind of light it studies, it has to be very, very, very cold. It's got to be at a temperature of 370 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. And so that drives a lot of things, including the solar shield that we see being revealed. But also, if you look down here in the corner, there's Earth, there's the moon. The James Webb Telescope is going to be 4 times further from planet Earth than the moon is. By comparison, the Hubble is only 340 miles above our heads. So it's a very distant orbit that allows it to be kept very, very cold to study the very faint, distant light coming from the origins of the universe. The solar shield you see here is to help protect the telescope from any kind of heat coming from Earth or from the sun. So deployment, you see it now, the mirror being assembled to its full 21-foot diameter. The orbit is going to be this unusual orbit, again, almost exactly 1 million miles from Earth, but lined up so that it stays lined up with Earth so communications can remain constant. And the position here, the cooling, the size of the telescope is going to really allow us to understand some of the deep questions of the universe in terms of the formation of the cosmos, seeing back to almost the very beginning of time, allowing us to study dark matter in more detail than before, studying exoplanets, planets around other stars. And so this launch, which we hope will go off in the middle of December, we're expecting to revolutionize astrophysics probably as greatly as the Hubble did. So with that list of 2 great events that are coming up, we hope possibly by the end of autumn here, if not probably early in 2022, that brings us to the formal end of our presentation. We'll stop and see if there's any questions we have that we can address before we wrap up this show. So yes, this is very, very much going to be an exciting time, both because of the things that NASA, and these things that NASA is working on have been in progress for a very long time. The Space Launch System for 11 years, and the James Webb for 25 years. So if these can both go off this fall or no later than this winter, it's going to really take things to the next level, both in terms of the plans to get humans back to the moon, including the first woman on the moon, and also the ability to really take astrophysics to the next level. Now, I wanted to mention, if anyone does want to support us, there is a donate button. The donate button is the only true way to support our programming here. We offer these programs totally for free. We just love bringing astronomy, space sciences, and the planetarium to you all. We also, again, the 3 people who are doing these shows online are the same people who do the shows in person. So if you do come and see us in our natural habitat, the Jennifer Chalsty Planetarium at Liberty Science Center, you'll see Andrew and me, and also Zach, the 3rd member currently of our crew, during the shows here. We do shows every hour pretty much, every day that we're open, so you can check out our website in terms of the schedule. We do a show on the planets. We do a show on dinosaurs, maybe being finished off by asteroids, and always popular One World, One Sky with Big Bird and Elmo giving young children a tour of the night sky and of the moon. So as a final reminder, we do have our T-Rex exhibit going here until the 9th of January. Wonderful, wonderful exhibit from MOS Chicago. And also we are opening Paw Patrol this coming Saturday. The folks at Planetarium Exhibits do a great job of all interest exhibits and exhibits geared towards young kids. So on that, with no further questions, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for our program. And we do hope to see you back here on November 16 at 5 o'clock for a deeper dive on the lunar eclipse that's coming up a couple of days after that on the 18th, 19th of November. Thank you, everybody.